what I've learned going through 7 recessions is you always got to assume the next recession is coming. You got to set up your exit strategy, your loan rollovers, your level of leverage, everything as if it's going to get as bad as any recession you've been through. And if you do it right and you have commitments or cash when the recession comes, you're in the driver's seat. And in the immortal words again of my former boss, big money in real estate is made by those who have cash when nobody else does.
So welcome back to the Massive Passive Cashflow Podcast. I'm Gary Wilson, your host. I'm so glad to have you back listening to the show or watching it if you're watching it in a video mode, which is fine. That means you're watching a recording. So and that's fine with me. As long as you're getting what you want, I'm happy. We have an excellent guest today, Luis Belmonte, and he and I were just having a great chat. Turns out we have some friends in common, and it's that happens every now and then. It's a good day when that happens. So first off, Luis, thank you for joining us today. I know your history, and I feel really honored to have you on the podcast today.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
Good. Well, I appreciate that. I understand a lot of your business was West Coast, but I also read somewhere that you were involved with an organization that had some international exposure too. But let's focus on the United States because most of my audience is U.S. And then we do have people in 30 odd countries downloading the podcast and investing here, but they want to know about investing here. So if you could, you've got an extensive background. I know you've written several books. I want to get into that too. But take us back to maybe what you would consider a critical inflection point in your life that really got you into this business. Like, you know what, this is what I really want to do with my career. And take us into that introduction part. What got you started? What were you doing that too? Mm-hmm.
Well, when I got out of Vietnam, I got a corporate job, which I didn't like, and I was living with a friend of mine from high school who was upside down in a little rehab deal, and he had met some hippie in a saloon who convinced him that gentrification was coming to San Francisco, and he had a building, and my flatmate was going to put up the money, and the hippie was going to do the work, but not much work was going on, so he was afraid he was going to lose his money. And I had some background. My father was a civil servant for his whole working life because he got very heavily hammered in the Depression, but he had all kinds of sidelines. He ran cattle and had rent houses and duplexes and fed chickens and turkeys. So I was a underpaid ranch hand, property manager, and preparer of his income taxes. So, I had some skill set, and I said, if you pay me $3 an hour, I will strap on my tool belt and get this job finished for you, and we can sell the sucker, make a little money. So he and I did 3 deals together, and then I got married to the living saint, and she became with child, which is the way we used to do it in the old days, and there was pressure for regular work. So I went to the headhunters and put my resume out, and I got an offer from a New York-based company that developed and managed warehouse spaces all over the United States, some in Canada, some in Europe. I think they even had one in South Africa. And they offered me more money than anybody else did. So I thought, well, I don't know a warehouse from a house of ill repute, but I'll learn for all of $18,000 a year, I believe it was. And I did. I learned the warehouse business, and in fact, I spent the next 35 years buying, selling, rehabbing, tenanting, financing warehouse space all over the United States, Mexico, Japan, Singapore. So I was at one point I was one of the biggest developers of warehouse space in the United States. So and then, things started to happen that sucked me in more and more, and it became a fascinating business. And it was really fascinating working for this company because they were upside down, over leveraged. And I didn't know that when I went to work for them, but the guy that owned it tried to start a television network because he'd inherited a local station from his father in Ohio somewhere, and he got way in debt and then tried to sell, and the buyer defaulted, and so he sold and leased back all of his warehouse buildings in order to raise cash. And he wasn't paying vendors, he wasn't paying brokers, he wasn't even paying the local equipment rental place. So I had to improvise everything, and I had a little money in the bank from combat pay, so I wasn't up against it, and I was footloose and fancy free and 3,000 miles from the New York office. So I just went out and did wheeling and dealing. And when I got a vendor, instead of promising to pay them, I would get one of my tenants to write them a check and give them the rent credit and send the paperwork into New York and wait for the screaming and say, if you don't like it, fire me. So this went on for 2.5 years, and then my paycheck bounced, which is always a sign of trouble. And the company went bankrupt in a cloud of dust. And it was one of the most fascinating experiences I've ever been through. It was one of the biggest bankruptcies in the history of the country up to that point. And I got to see who made out, who got hammered, who'd made smart investments, who'd made dumb investments, who hired the right lawyers, who did the right pleadings, and all of it fascinated me. So then I went to work for a Texas-based development company, and I was their partner, eventually their partner in Northern California, and I built 18 million feet of warehouse buildings, mostly in the Bay Area, but some in Fresno and Antioch and some surrounding areas. And we were in the tax evasion business. In those days, the marginal tax rate was 50%. So all deals were structured to save taxes. So anybody that was paying 50% was either investing in oil and gas or real estate in order to generate write-off. And the high-powered deals were $2 or $3 write-off for every dollar you invested. Our deals were a little more conservative than that, and you actually had a chance of getting your money back. But we were in the business of tax write-off and inflation. And suddenly in 1986, that business became wholly unviable because of the Tax Act and the Reagan administration. The marginal tax rate came down to 28%. There was a firewall between investment losses and ordinary income. Every developer in America was out of business. In the only true thing, totally true thing that Donald Trump ever said, he described it as like going through the windshield. And so we were all profoundly broke because we were all over levered. And once you took the tax juice out of the deal, the loan was bigger than the building was worth. So that imploded. And I ended up thinking, well, before 86, developers owned the property. After 86, the institutions are going to own the property. So I went to work for some very bright guys I knew who were investment advisors. And they took me on as their pet developer and put me on a separate floor because they didn't want any institutional investor to see that they had a developer on the payroll, because in 1990, developers were out of fashion. So, and I did a couple of deals on their behalf, little build-to-suit deals, but mostly what I brought in they thought was too risky. So I ended up being the highly exalted executive vice president in charge of every screwed up deal in the United States in their portfolio. So when institutions sell property to each other, they always throw some dogs in the portfolio to get them off the books. So I was the VP dogs, and I loved it. Just go solve problems, fix things up. And then we at some point we decided that Silicon Valley had reached a nadir in terms of pricing. Basically, buildings were being given away. So my boss, Hamid Moghadam, smartest guy I've ever met in this business, went down south and tied up a bunch of R&D buildings and a bunch of warehouse buildings. And he took me down to look them over. And I said, I know the warehouse buildings. I competed against the builder. I can fill those up in a heartbeat, not a problem. The R&D buildings, couldn't you have tied up good R&D buildings? These are trash. They're 1.5 stories. They're underparked. They're mislocated. They're funky in the extreme. And he said, Louis, you dummy, it's a timing play. And I thought, okay, I know my place. It's my job to fix the problem. His job to make strategic decisions. So we took the portfolio out, and none of the institutions wanted to play. because they'd been so badly burned in Silicon Valley that, they didn't want to go back. So, you lust after gold at $2,000 an ounce, but won't buy it at 1,200 because you got your ass kicked at 2,000. So, he said, we're not putting up with this crap. The next time we have a good idea, we're going to be able to execute on it. So what we did was we did a roll-up and went public. And we had something like 105 clients who invested money with us. And we sent out a big offering document, 300 and some odd pages. And we said, look, you give us your property, we'll give you stock in our company. And there's an arbitrage between the private and the public markets, and you'll be able to mark up your portfolio 15% overnight. And we're going to escrow a big slug of stock for 2 years to see how the stock performs. And if you don't end up getting the arbitrage, we'll give you extra stock. And in the end, I think we got about 2/3 of that stock, and the investors got about 1/3 because the price of our stock held up quite well. But I got to stand on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange and watch our company go public, which was a thing. And so then my job after that was to run their development business. So I started doing deals in, 15 or 16 markets in the United States, 3 markets in Mexico, Narita Airport in Tokyo, and the airport in Singapore. And it was nothing but fun. I mean, I was wheeling and dealing all over the world. I loved it. I'm a deal junkie, and I just had a whole lot of fun learning other cultures, other ways of doing business, and it was great. And then when I was 64. The boss said, look, we want to ramp the development program up from $1 billion a year to $4 billion a year, and we think you're a little too old to pull that off. And I said, well, I'm a little too old to be an international road warrior, but I was hoping to hang around for a few months and get my bonus and qualify for this year's stock grant. And he said, we're going to vest you in everything out over the next 4 years. And I said, okay, well, would you like me to clean out my desk this afternoon or tomorrow morning? So if you're going to give me a handshake that got that much money in it. And so after that, I resurrected a little development company that I've been running on the side on behalf of our partners and the senior people in the organization with a friend of mine, and that's Seven Hills Properties. And we have low-income housing, one little industrial deal, and neighborhood retail in Oregon. So that's the whole story, and I've loved every minute of it.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's quite a lot packed in there. I definitely have some questions. So right at the end there, you mentioned Seven Hills.
Yeah.
Seven Hills. So would you mind unwrapping that just a little bit? And I'll kind of work my way backwards. I want to go back to you mentioned some of the scars too, and I love hearing the good, the bad, the ugly, because I want people to understand when you're in business long enough, anybody that says they never made a mistake or they never had any problem, that's ridiculous. So, oh my gosh. But take it, start at the Seven Hills and tell us, because you mentioned it's got a couple components to it. If you could unwrap that a little bit, I want people to hear what's going on today in today's market.
Okay.
Did you know that you can participate in class every Monday? We call it Monday Night Live, 7 p.m. Eastern, with me and dozens of other investor agents from around the country, in fact, the world. Every Monday, totally free. No selling, no recruiting, just straight up education on anything and everything in real estate. And we have a lot of good guests coming on once or twice a month, bringing in expertise on subjects like how to buy a house with crypto. Okay. How about them apples? What about AI? How's AI affecting our business? How about the metaverse, blockchain processing? We're already using it in title work. So come on to Monday Night Live. Be ready to take notes and ask questions because it's live and engaging, and you get to participate by asking questions and meeting others. So we'll see you there. Go to realestatewithgarywilson.com, click on the resource tab, drop down, and you'll see Monday Night Live. And in there, you can see one of the most recent classes. But more importantly, you can register for class as many as you want going up to like the end of the year, I believe. So in any case, do that. We'll see you on Monday Night Live. Look forward to meeting you in person. Take care.
So we started out, and my mission in life was to build a real development company, because most developers today are indentured servants of private equity, institutional capital of some kind. They don't own the property.
Mhm.
I wanted a situation where we were our own investor, so we had to build a balance sheet, and both my partner and I had some capital, and one of the original AMB partners, and that's now Prologis, the biggest REIT on earth, but one of the original partners joined us as a silent partner. And he brought his balance sheet, which was considerable, to the table. So we had borrowing capacity, but
Okay.
I wanted us to be the investor. So we ended up building 30 drugstores for Walgreens, and we built them and sold them. And the trick was, we'd find a site, or Walgreens would tell us a site they liked. We'd agree on a rent for that site. Then we'd go try and tie up the land for a price that we thought made sense. We'd build the building. As soon as the slab was dry, we'd put it on the market. We'd get a lot of action from 1031 buyers, because it was a 25-year lease with then AA credit, and so we built 30 and sold 28 and a half of them. We should have sold all 30, as it turns out, but anyway, and that's what built our balance sheet. And then we did another thing while that was going on. We started building low-income housing, because that's what we specialized in was politics. And on the western shore of the United States, politics is everything. The land is worthless, the lease is worthless unless you have a building permit. So my partner is a political genius. I've been in business with him for 35 years and still don't really know what his politics are, because he never talks about it, because you don't want to alienate somebody. So, and he has a great feel for what's going to be able to get across the finish line and what isn't. So you don't wade too far into the swamp and spend too much money. So what we did for Walgreens is we entitled tough sites. And so they were willing to pay us additional rent because they really wanted the site, which was hard to entitle, and the corporation couldn't go into a neighborhood without getting their brains beat out. So, we worked all the local angles and went to the golf tournaments and attended the testimonial dinners and all the crap you go through to ingratiate yourself to the politicians. And so we decided that we'd also do low-income housing, because it's a political rat's nest, but you don't have to put up any capital. I mean, there's a little front-end money involved, but basically once you close on your construction loan, you have no investment. Now, it takes some time to be genuinely profitable, but we've got 502 units of it now in 2 projects. One of them's 30 years old, the other's 20 some years old, and they're cash cows at this point. But it took lots of political juice, and one of our partners in each of those deals is a big-time Democratic politician, and he's the one that navigates the stuff for us at the higher levels of bureaucracy, and other than that contributes absolutely nothing, but that's a key element of doing low-income housing. And the shopping centers is, what we did was we build the Walgreens, and normally the site was bigger. So we build the Walgreens, we'd sell the Walgreens and pay the whole loan off. And then we had the rest of the land free and clear. And gradually we've built that out. And we have 8 little centers in Oregon that we built over time, and, kind of filling in the pads that we ended up with after we sold the Walgreens.
Okay. Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, I think there's a lot of people listening to this that can see themselves, evolving in their career path to doing something like this. And it's definitely, I mean, you've got a great mixture in there of different components of real estate, retail, residential, and really covering the low income housing. Because right now, I'm sure everybody that has a television knows there's a shortage of housing in the country, and it's been developing a bit more rapidly over the last few years. And a lot of it is the need is low income, but there's not a lot of investors and builders that want to do that, because they want to, everybody wants to build the big luxury condos and luxury country club estates and things like that. And I get all that, but the fact is we need housing, so we have to provide, some type of incentives, and we need those people in the political circles to go to bat for us. I know some people are probably thinking I'm nowhere near that, Gary, but the reality is if you stick with it long enough, guys, you will be. I promise you, it's just a mathematical certainty. I mean, I've been doing this for 39 years. Holy smoke. So in any case,
Yeah.
yeah, and I still feel like I got gas in the tank, but the thing is you learn as you go, and one of the things you learn is you just have to keep going. Some days you get the bear, some days the bear gets you, and you take on scars. So I want to go back a little bit to the scars. I know you and I could probably talk for the next 5 weeks, but would you mind sharing with someone? I'll call it one of your favorite scars. Something you really got dinged on, but later on you look back and you're thinking, gee, you know what? That hurt at the time, but boy, it sure taught me a lesson that I'm applying now. Something like that to give people hope that when some things don't go right, guys, and they will definitely not go right on occasion, you do not give up. You take your lump and you move forward. I mean, so if you got one of those to share, I would love to have you do that.
Well, I've got several. One I already shared was the bankruptcy of the D.H.
Yeah.
Overmeyer company, and
Mhm.
it's Christmas time. My paycheck bounced, the expense check bounced, my bonus check bounced, and my wife had already bought the Christmas presents and put them on our
Yeah.
credit card. So that was
Yeah.
that was an unhappy event. But it turned out in the process of watching that whole thing come down, I learned about the bankruptcy business. So when I was working for the big shops and one of my tenants went bankrupt, I knew which lawyer to call. I knew which pleading to put in. I knew how to get my act in there as soon as possible to either accept the lease or reject it, so I could go on about my business and milk as much money as possible out of the settlement. So I did the Webvan bankruptcy, and when we rented 1,000,000 feet to Webvan, and in 4 deals. But I said right from the get-go, this is a bankruptcy waiting to happen. So we have to assume that they might go bankrupt. So we have to run all of our numbers such that we can relet this space on a timely basis
Yeah.
at a rent that exceeds what they were paying. And I gave them almost no tenant improvement money on the
Yeah.
theory that if they put stuff in that wasn't reusable, we were just getting hammered and we never get our money back. So they had freezers and coolers and all kinds of stuff in the space, which I managed to sell. We managed to get 3 settlement payments out of them. We re-rented all the space, and at the end of the day, it was a push. But that was 2 years of work. The kind of the first big mistake was the third rehab deal I did in San Francisco. We bought a perfectly sound house that was kind of beat up because it was a rent house from an estate for $28,000, believe it or not. That house today
Okay.
would sell for $1,400,000, same damn house, thanks to the grand government policies we have. But
Yeah.
$28,000, $2,800 down. They carried a note for 2 years, and we set out to create a masterpiece. And so we went in, we worked our ass off. We refinished 6 floors of hardwood. We put in a new kitchen. We added a bathroom. I redid all the double hung windows, 30 some double hung windows, new glazing, new glass, prime and paint, wax the casing, new weights and rope. Beautiful, beautiful. So we come to sell it. Our loan is running out. We have no idea how to refinance. We don't have any pocket to carry the deal, and the price we need is $3,000 or $4,000 above kind of the neighborhood median, which we had never studied. So, and the interest rates are 9.5%, and I mean we are up against the wall, and so we finally sold it. And we barely made wages. And the first thing the buyer did was put in wall-to-wall carpet and aluminum windows. I mean, I almost cried for the only time since I was 5 years old. And I said to myself, learn something here. You have to have an exit strategy that's worked out. You have to have staying power. You have to have alternatives, and get out of the taste business. And ever since then, with 1 or 2 exceptions, I've been in the shallow end of the gene pool. We're into low income housing. dingbat retail, neighborhood retail. I own units in San Francisco, working class housing. Everything I do is in the shallow end of the gene pool because I don't understand the luxury business at all, at all.
Yeah.
And when I did do a high end job, I redeveloped a port shed in San Francisco to be the headquarters for Prologis. I teamed up with a woman who had great design talent. And I said, here's the way this is going to work. You're going to do the inside and I'm going to do the outside. So I'm driving piles in the bay. I'm walking around in the political mud. I'm doing all of that. So I'm fighting with the contractors and she's doing the interior. And between us, we did a beautiful job. But the inside had nothing to do with me, I'll tell you. So, I learned my lesson. The other big lesson was the bankruptcy in after '86. So we're building Walgreens drugstores, 3 or 4 a year. We got a machine going on, and we're making good money, except for the deal that burned down when it was 90% complete in Reno. And a couple of ground lease deals we did that we barely got out of. It was almost all gravy, but I kept saying every couple of months, look, this could end tomorrow. This is a corporation. They have executive meetings in glass-walled conference rooms. They could decide to shut the program down tomorrow. They could decide to bring it in-house. They could decide to pick a single contractor. Don't get any front money out there. And so about 6 years ago, they had a conference call with all the real estate reps in the United States and fired them on the phone off a script. Coldest corporate move I've ever seen. We had 4 deals in committee, 2 of which they'd come to us to do. They turned all 4 deals down. Well, we had maybe 200 grand in front money out, but it wasn't a rounding error, but it wasn't a killer because I knew that if I've got a business plan that depends upon something over which I have no control, I have to be able to turn the switch instantly. And so I'd say the final thing is what I've learned going through 7 recessions is you always got to assume the next recession is coming. You got to set up your exit strategy, your loan rollovers, your level of leverage, everything as if it's going to get as bad as any recession you've been through. And if you do it right and you have commitments or cash when the recession comes, you're in the driver's seat. And in the immortal words, again, of my former boss, big money in real estate is made by those who have cash when nobody else does. So that's what I try and do is have cash when nobody else does. And the last deal that we did, we got a chance to buy a building in Bend, Oregon at about maybe 25% of replacement cost. And so we called a couple of people who've invested with us in the past and said, we're going to put up half the cash. You want to put up the other half? And we just bought it with no debt because, debt doesn't work at this point. So, we've now got this thing free and clear and, we got some action on it. We'll get it leased and, it'll free and clear at 12, 13, something like that, which is perfectly satisfactory.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a bit. And you're mentioning some of my favorite areas in the country too, by the way. I did a lot of traveling all over the U.S. and Canada. One of my favorite places was Bend. I mean, I felt out of place because I had a clean car. If you drive through Bend, Oregon, every car is covered in dust and dirt and bikes on top and kayaks out the back. And but it's a wonderful place, wonderful people. And it grew a lot, especially with remote work. So we own a little center there that's a barn burner. Yeah, I'm going to get back out there. I rafted the Clackamas River too, by the way, which is north of there, more sort of like Mount Hood area. But I love that part of the country, man. So I know we're going to run out of time here, but I wanted to touch on the books. Everybody listening here, just write this down. If you can remember Street Dog, so Street Dog Manager, Street Dog MBA, and Street Dog. I can't read my own.
Street Dog Negotiator.
Here you go. But how can you touch on those? We've got about a minute or so to go, but tell people where they can go to find out more information on you, the books, Yeah.
on Amazon, Kindle or paperback. They're cheap. So Real Estate 101 kind of gives you the basics of every property type and kind of the basics of investment management. Street Dog MBA is stories I tell about things that got screwed up and what lesson I think I learned. And
There you go.
the answer is, some people learn by reading, some people learn by listening to others, but most men have to go ahead and pee on the electric fence, to quote Mark Twain. So I'm trying to help you not have to pee on the electric fence as many times.
Yeah.
So, and a Street Dog Negotiator is all about focusing on what you need as opposed to focusing on winning. Get what you need and some of you want, some of what you want, and walk out of the room. Go to the next deal. Street Dog Manager, the basic premise is if you're running an organization, you're not the boss, you're the servant. If you're seeking power and money and prestige, and you forget the organization, you're going to go broke. If you serve the organization, the power and money and prestige will come to you second, not first. So that's kind of the overview of my catalog of literature. And it, like I say, it's cheap and it's easy to get.
Good. Well, I tell you what, I really appreciate it. Listen, I definitely want to have you back because I've still got questions, but I know how the podcast business works. So we'll have to we'll do a sequel, and we can talk about some other really good topics that you have that I know you can share some good wisdom with. So Luis, I just want to say thank you again for doing this. I know you're a busy guy. You've got a wealth of experience, and I do feel lucky having you on today. So
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Thank you too. If everybody listening, thank you, and God bless you and all your loved ones. If you could please leave a review, we greatly appreciate it. In the podcast world, your review is our currency. So if you do that, Luis and I both really appreciate it. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next Massive Passive Cashflow Podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Massive Passive Cashflow. Be sure to go to realestatewithgarywilson.com to join our community and start building wealth today.